Hey guys, welcome to Team Bad Decisions. I'm Brandon. We're here to talk about one of the factions today that is near and dear to my heart. Not too near, or else I may eat it, but it's the Tyranids, the spacefaring bug force, like similar to Zerg in StarCraft or the bugs from Starship Troopers. See, we got already Frosty and Nergalmat in the chat, killing it. Great to see you guys. But to start us out, we're gonna go from a little bit of a lore background. No, I didn't hear from Eric that he was gonna actually do it. All he sent was a cryptic text about, hey, I good do, and then I asked him what he meant by that, and then he didn't get back to me. So I don't know what's going on. Bowers, how's it going, man? So a little bit of a lore dump, and then we're going to talk about the models in the army, what's good, what's bad, and with the current changes to the meta, what tricks you may see coming out of a Tyranid army. But kind of talking about where Tyranids are in the lore wise. They are a faction that in and of itself is its own biological ecosystem. Oh, gotcha. So looks like Frosty set up the top viewers. So Streamlabs is number one, obviously. Team Bad Decisions 2. But cool. I'm glad to see that the functionality is working on that kind of stuff. But Tyranids, they are a biological ecosystem. So they float in on these tendrils. So if my face is the map of the Warhammer 40k universe, they're kind of coming in from the sides, and they're using biological ships, and by that is the ship that they're actually on is a creature, and their MO is that they're hungry. They're moving in with biological creatures that will place down on a planet and eat everything. It's said in lore that a Tyranid hive ship passing by a planet leeches off enough Tyranid forces to completely strip the planet of all biological matter in a matter of weeks. So these ships just kind of float by and then bud off smaller ships that fall to the surface of these planets. Then out of the stomach and the maw of these bugs, big bio bug ships, smaller bugs from the Ripper, which is the size of a small dog, all the way up to the Hive Tyrant, which is a building, the size of a building, come out and adapt to the planet, consume the planet and its biomass, and then come back to the hive ship and essentially just take a dive into the acid pool inside the ship, disintegrate back down, leaving their biomatter that they've consumed into the ship, and then the hive fleet, as it approaches and goes by, actually will siphon up those materials, minerals, and everything that's left by on the planet. So you may see, like, Tyranids they're not necessarily the quintessential bad guys of the 40k universe, but they're used in a lot of writing to place them against the Eldar, to place them against the Space Marines, because all they do is eat. They consume and move. The very early on, Tyranids are known for attacking and coming in to try and hit Terra, the main Space Marine, main human planet. So against Terra, there was, let me make sure I get this Hive Fleet correct. I believe it's Hive Fleet Behemoth? Behemoth? Hive Fleet Behemoth was the one that fought the Ultramarines chapter. So you may ask, like, what is a Hive Fleet, or what constitutes a Hive Fleet? So a Hive Fleet is one of the tendrils, or a large mass of Tyranid ships that are all together and adapting in a similar way. You may see similar coloration on their armor. You may see similar adaptation or battle style. But there's a few different Hive Fleets, and we could touch on those. Actually, if I pull it up here, it should give me a Tyranid Hive Fleet. Let's add a Hive Fleet. So Behemoth is the Hive Fleet that originally fought the Space Marines as they were headed towards Terra in a giant kind of pincer move towards the planet. Hive Fleet Kraken is fighting the Tau in their kind of edge of space, and in their fight with the Tau, the Tau and the Dark Eldar Homunculus Coven the Tau enlisted help from a Dark Eldar Homunculus Coven to help them fight off the Tyranid fleet Kraken. Now, another fleet that is known is Hive Fleet Leviathan. And that's actually kind of interesting too. With Hive Fleet Leviathan, they were headed towards Terra again after Hive Fleet Behemoth was repulsed by the Ultramarines chapter, but Leviathan was intercepted by the Ordo Xenos Inquisitors, and instead of actually being stopped, what happened was the Ordo Xenos Inquisitors lured the Hive Fleet Kraken off, or Hive Fleet Leviathan off course, and sent them to a orc planet. Now, they thought this was a great idea because they'll make orcs and Tyranids fight each other, and then neither one of them will have enough time to fight the humans. But over years, it did stall a lot of the faction fighting. But given that orcs at the molecular level are like fungus and adapt and fight, and the spores will fight, and the Tyranids, in a very similar fashion, at a molecular level to a macro level, are fighting creatures. Yeah, 100%, Matt. Where did you send that to me? So that I'll pull that up when I do the list review. Is that to my phone, or did you send it via email? You sexted it to me? Okay. Well, I'll look at it via your sexting in 1 second. Or right after we do the lore review. So the orcs and the Tyranids were fighting each other. And orcs, as they fight, they grow. They fight, they get stronger. They lose, they get stronger. What's going on, CJ, man? How's it going? We're just doing a little bit of a Tyranid lore review, and then we're going to push it into Tyranid units and lists. And Matt submitted a Tyranid list he'd like me to check out and go over. But so the orcs were actually fighting. They'd lose, they'd come back stronger. And if you looked at the battle, like even from a micro standpoint, you had Tyranid microorganisms fighting orc spores microorganisms. You had orc bodies fighting orc boys fighting with Tyranid warriors. You had giant orcs, biggins, and like orc bosses and robots fighting Tyranid macro. And every time the Tyranids would adapt to try and fight the orcs would adapt to try and fight the Tyranids, and they both round themselves up into being these two massive fighting forces that were almost unstoppable because they were both adapting so fast, and where the humans thought it would actually be fun to just divert them into each other, they actually created two of the strongest enemies to ever hit the human race by making them grind against each other, getting better and better and better. So you're just getting it, CJ, you're just getting into 40K? Is there a particular army that you're interested in? Or is it just like 40K in general? So that's one of the Tyranid forces. The other thing that makes Tyranids unique, and you'll see it in their rules, is that they're controlled by a singular hive mind. It's like a psychic ability that is that ties all their organisms together. The hive mind comes from the fleet, but there are synaptic, or it's called synapse, creatures that have a strong connection, and they act like radio towers, taking in the psychic energy from the fleet and giving it out to the relay creatures, the smaller creatures. This is what allows massive hive fleets to almost react in battle instantaneously, because the fleet itself, while being thousands and millions of small organisms, is all synaptically connected to one hive mind per hive fleet, and it allows the fleet, all those organisms, to act like a singular, like white and red blood cells in a body. The body tells it where to go, and they all react. Yes, the biovores they have, they're living cannons. I can pull up a little biovore picture to show everybody. Let me grab those. And they actually have exocrines now, which are even bigger living cannons. So the biovore, I think this is a good picture of it. I'm going to throw that in, and then I'm going to grab an exocrine too, so you can see the difference. Not exocrine pancreatics. Let's get a better picture of that. Okay, there's an exocrine. Okay, I'm gonna throw these in real quick. Just give me a second. We'll get rid of this hive tyrant. Yeah, I'm sure. So the one that has a living cannon, the biovore, that's still in the game. He's right there. He shoots these little mines that come down on the field, and they're very interesting because they're one of the only units in the whole game of 40K that actually shoot a living mine that when it misses, you get to place the mine down on the field, and it floats around and can still explode. So even a miss can still turn into something. And then this is the exocrine. Ooh, that picture is big. That's a big one. So that guy is about twice the size. For reference, the base of the biovore is a 50 or 60 millimeter base, and the base of the exocrine is 120 on its long edge, so it's about twice as big. Yes, the exocrine is really good. It's akin to a plasma cannon in strength. We can look it up when we go through that. But they also have like the Leman Russ rule where they get to shoot twice if they don't move, or move under half distance, which is great for that cannon, that massive cannon, to be able to shoot twice. Frosty, thanks for the sub, man. Hope you're doing well. We're just made affiliate, which is great news. But since we're so new in affiliate, we're working on getting artwork made for our emotes and sub images. So we don't have the artwork yet, but we're working on it. We're getting there. Thank you nonetheless for the sub. So we're in the biological weapon kind of zone with the exocrine and the biovore. Oh, your notification was behind the pictures. Oh, I'm so sorry. I just added the pictures in. I should have moved them smaller. Bad. Uh, yeah, but that's my bad. You are first. You are first in here. Uh, but so we were talking about how orcs were fighting the Tyranids and they came in an invasion, and we talked about the synapse and the way that synapse works. The other thing that Tyranids have from a rule standpoint that's kind of fluffy and something that you're gonna have to worry about is what is it called? It's called instinctive behavior, and it means that if a unit is not a synapse creature and it's not within a certain range of a synapse creature on the board, it's going to have penalties if it's not moving and attacking the closest thing or shooting at the closest thing. So this army, you're going to have to be careful. It has definitely, we'll talk about its benefits, but one of its drawbacks is that if you don't control your synapse or your mind bugs that give out the orders, if you're not careful with where you place them and where you move them, some of your armies. Nurgle Matt got the sub in there. Thank you, Matt. I greatly appreciate it. You're second. You got in right after Frosty. And I did move the picture. Good. Okay. So if you're not, where was I? So if you're not in the range of the synapse, your army is going to be much more difficult to control effectively. So we'll look at, let's go to a list. We'll go to, so we'll look at the different hive fleet options we have. The hive fleets and the, like whenever you open up a 40k book, if you want to know kind of how the army plays or in a general rule of how the army plays, I would recommend that you always look at the bonuses that you get from, in Tyranids they're called hive fleets, but every codex has some sort of like overarching family tree, and then you get bonuses for being in each family. Like Space Marines, it's called chapters. In Eldar, it's called something. The name escapes me, but in Tyranids it's called hive fleets. And if we'll look at the bonuses that the hive fleets give you, Behemoth, hive fleet Behemoth is, ooh, my camera is like right in the way. If I move myself, okay, good. So Behemoth. Hive Fleet Behemoth gives you re-rolled failed charge rolls for units with this adaptation, so close combat oriented. Hive Fleet Gorgon gives you re-roll wound rolls of 1 in the fight phase for units with this adaptation. Again, a good melee buff for a whole army. Swarming Insects, you can re-roll hit rolls in the fight phase for this unit with an adaptation that targets units containing fewer models than their own. So this is another fight buff, but a buff with unit model count. So you want more models in your unit than the unit that you're fighting. Jogmangunder is Tunnel Networks. A unit with this adaptation, other than units that can fly, always has the benefit of cover for the purposes of shooting. So for people that aren't familiar with cover, it's added 1 to your armor save. And then if a unit advances or declares a charge, it loses this benefit for this adaptation until the start of the next movement phase. So this one benefits a little more survivability to an army that wants to remain stationary. And I haven't personally seen a lot of use for different things that say, like, if you don't move, gain cover. Because in a lot of games, there's going to be a lot of cover already available to you. And with that, oh, thanks, Bowers. Just saw that. Craft World. 100%. I should have remembered that, but it's been a long day. And how are you doing, Nick? Everything going good with you? It's been like 24 hours since we've heard from everybody. I've been streaming a lot lately. Uh, but like I think there's uh, enough terrain usually on the field to to put things in cover, and you can't get double the benefit of cover. You don't get +2. So if you're in cover already, you don't get any benefit from having tunnel networks. Hive Fleet Kraken is when a unit with this adaptation advances, it rolls 3 dice and picks the highest to add to its move characteristic. For instance, you get a 18% chance normally to get your 6 on an advance, because it's a 1 in 6 chance. If you're rolling 3 dice, take the highest, you pretty much have a 50% chance of getting your 6. And it's getting a 4 or higher is like an 86% chance on 3 dice. So it makes advancing significantly better, or at least more reliable. The chances that you roll trip 1s is like 1 in 180, some ridiculously small number. In addition, such units can fall back and charge in the same turn. This is more beautiful than you'd think. Being able to fall back and charge in the same turn means that, say you charged, you got to swing first because you charged. That means you get to, on the next turn, fall back and charge something else, fall back on the other side of them, and then keep charging deeper into their lines. Or, worst case scenario, you fall back and you charge back into the guys that you were in combat with, and you get to strike first again because you charged. So being able to fall back and charge is definitely a buff worth looking at. Hive Fleet Kronos, which is a one of my favorite, not just because of what it does here, which is reroll hit rolls of 1 for units of this adaptation in the shooting phase if they did not move in the preceding movement phase. So you'll see there's going to be a lot of Tyranid synergy with the things that shoot well not wanting to move anyway. So getting the rerolled 1s is a benefit there. But Hive Fleet Kronos has some of the best Tyranid anti-psyker builds in stratagems and in tactics. So Kronos would be great against your Grey Knights right now, or against your T-Suns, both of which are going to be seeing a rise in popularity with their new builds. And Kronos has the ability basically to say, every time you fail a psychic test, you take a mortal wound. And I can give you -1 stacked to -2 on your psychic test rolls. So a smite that goes off on a 5 now needs a 7. It's still a 55% chance to go off on a 7, around there, but that's significantly better than a 5. And then when your paladins are casting smite on a 5 and they take a mortal wound, and you're potentially, I mean, paladins have more than 1 wound, but you're potentially killing a wounded paladin or wounding a paladin and denying that power getting off. It's really nice. Really nice. And it definitely adds that risk to psychic heavy armies that aren't used to being challenged on their psychic potential, because there's not a lot of armies that can challenge on a psychic level. So that's an interesting Kronos tip. And then Leviathan, the last one, is Synaptic Imperative. Roll a d6 each time a unit with this adaptation loses a wound within 6 inches of a friendly Synapse unit, and that counts themselves. So if they are a Synapse unit, they are within 6 inches of themselves. On a 6, the damage is ignored, and the unit does not lose a wound. Ignore this adaptation for units that is currently affected by the Catalyst Psychic Power. So basically they're saying units that are within 6 inches of a Synapse creature have a 6-up effective Feel No Pain, if you're been playing for a little while, and that the Catalyst Power, which also gives a similar buff, just doesn't allow you to roll twice. You're going to take the Catalyst Power because it's better. Now, we'll pick this again. Let's look at the models we want to build the list around, and then we'll come back to see what would be the best way of building it around. I kind of think this is going to go the way of a couple different armies in which we're going to want to break it out into multiple battalions. Partly because Tyranids, one of their great benefits is that they can fill a battalion relatively cheaply, and also because with multiple battalions you get a lot of CP for use on your stratagems, and you can move out those buffs. You could have a melee-oriented battalion buffing your melee guys, and a shooting-oriented battalion buffing your shooting guys. Looking into HQ choices, you have the Broodlord, the Hive Tyrant, Malanthropes, Neurothropes, a named Carnifex called Old One Eye, a Tervigon, the Swarmlord, which is a named Hive Tyrant, and a Tyranid Prime. Tyranid Prime being kind of an upgraded warrior. So, a Broodlord is kind of the upgraded Genestealer cult, or Genestealer guy. He's the leader of, in lore wise, he's kind of the leader of the Genestealer group, Genestealers being one of the troop choices. He has Brood Telepathy, which allows you to add 1 to hit rolls in the fight phase for Hive Fleet Genestealer units within 6 inches of him. The model itself has a 5-up invul save. Enemy Psychers subtract 1 from any psychic test they make when they're within 18 inches of a unit with this ability, and your Psychers are unaffected. Well, not only your Psychers, but all Tyranid Psychers are unaffected, so your opponent's Tyranid Psychers also won't be affected by this. And this unit is Synapse. So Hive Fleet will automatically pass Morale if they're within 12 inches of a Synapse creature. He can cast 1 spell, deny 1 spell, no smite, and 1 spell from the Hive Fleet, Hive Mind. He moves an 8-inch, which is good. 8 inches is actually pretty fast compared to other on-foot guys, but with his ability to advance and charge, this model can charge even if they advance in a turn, which means since he has no guns, there's no reason not to charge him or not to advance him. So you could look at this movement 8 and think of it as 8 plus d6, so it's always going to be 9 and can be up to 14. And if we were going to take a melee-oriented group, then we could look at ways of either making them faster, which is the Kraken, I believe, was the 3d6. Yeah, so Kraken, giving him 3d6, which skews his movement a lot higher. And also, a good trick with the Broodlord is that he's a character, which a character with less than 10 wounds, so you could hide him. And if you look at his combat potential, even for 115 points, you're looking at a weapon skill 2 plus creature with a smite or another spell, strength 5, toughness 5 base, which is kind of meh, you know? And with his weapon being strength user, that means it's a strength 5 weapon, but 6 attacks. Man, this guy is a blender. His base attacks are AP -3, damage D3. Then you can re-roll failed wound rolls with this weapon, which means he's strength 5, he goes into a unit that is toughness 4, you're going to wound on 3s re-rolling, and then for every wound roll of a 6+, that each time you make a wound roll of 6+, that hit is resolved to AP -6, which is no armor save whatsoever. I mean, it could have said -5 too, because there's no way you can get a 1-up armor save, but -6 and flat 3 damage. So there's a little bit of like time taken with this guy, because not only do you have to do your hits, re-roll your wounds, and then you have to like parse out which wounds go into one category and which wounds go into another category. But if you use him as a dart, you hide him in your troops, you hide him amongst other things, and then he comes out, he could very easily rip through a unit of Space Marines, a unit of maybe even a unit of orcs. I think the problem is that he's still only 6 attacks. So he's gonna kill, if you go into the right thing, he'll kill 4 or 5 guys pretty easily. Multiple damage makes him a Primaris killer, a nightmare into Primaris. You put this guy into a Primaris squad, he's gonna kill the whole Primaris squad. But you can't put this guy into a 30-man group of orcs. He'll kill 6 orcs, and then he's going to get beaten to death with his 4-up armor save and toughness 5 by the rest of those orcs. Yes, he wants to get into elite groups. The Hive Tyrant, he has an explosion. He's got a 4-up invul save, which is really nice, compared to the 5 of the Broodlord. He says the same enemy psychers get -1. He's a synapse creature, just like the Broodlord. And then the synapse range is 18 inches rather than 12. And some people, when they see 18 inches, they think, oh, that's a straight line. And it is a straight line between one model and another, 18 inches. But when you think of it from the 3D of the board, that's an 18-inch bubble all the way around him. So he could actually give synapse to a creature that's 18 inches to his right and synapse to an 18 inches to its left. You have a good 36-inch wide swath of area that this guy is providing synapse to. He has degrading movement, degrading weapon skill, degrading ballistic skill. You can give him upgrades with guns and in weapons. And he's 12 wounds, so he's not a character that you could hide. Which is one of the downsides I see to the Hive Tyrant, is you can't hide him. So if you're going to spend points on him, 163 points, and then if you give him upgrades, I actually would give him downgrades. Because you could have Monstrous Scything Talons, or you take the Monstrous Scything Talons away, you can give him Monstrous Rending Claws. Ooh. 2 Monstrous Rending Claws. And those are free. So you basically give him the weapon that the Broodlord had, and he gets the -3 D3 damage, with 6s being a flat 3 damage. And you save yourself 20 points. You could give him guns. He has the option of giving him the Heavy Venom Cannon for 18 points, which is a anti-vehicle weapon, 36-inch, assault D3, strength 9, AP -2, 3 damage. So you'll get, 2 shots on average out of it. But he is a ballistic skill 3 to start with, going to 4 at the end. It's not hateful, but I think the big downside to upgrading this guy that I see is that the more of a threat you make him, the more he will just get single targeted out, because he's really relying on his 4-up invul save to save him. You can't character shield him. Yeah, I've seen people use his 2 powers to cast the Feel No Pain on a Hive Tyrant to try and keep it alive, but Tyranids you're not going to see function really well unless you can, like orcs do, spread your threats out amongst multiple models. An individual Tyranid is not as strong as 70 Tyranids running at you. A a pressure build works better in the Tyranids overall than, like, you don't want to play Tyranids like you play Knights. If you want to play that kind of game where you have a very elite army, Tyranids don't run well with that. You can do it, but I don't think that you'd run as effectively. Malanthropes are they have the enhanced toxic miasma at the end of the fight phase. They deal mortal wounds on a 4-up. They're a monstrous brood. Prey adaptation. At the last model, the enemy is slain within 1 inch of a Malanthrope. All models in the army with the same high fleet keyword as the Malanthrope may reroll hit rolls of 1 against models with the same faction as the enemy slain. I've seen this do good things, but you have to get the Malanthrope into 1 inch of something that dies. And if your opponent knows that you have a Malanthrope and they know what the Malanthrope is doing, they're not going to let that happen. In and of itself, it's a 9 wound, 5-up save thing. So it of itself is not very survivable. If I personally see someone have a Malanthrope on the board, I'm just going to kill it. Or I'm going to make sure I don't get within 1 inch of it. So your opponent also a nifty trick from the Malanthrope, and a good thing about it is they subtract 1 from hit rolls for ranged weapons that target a high fleet unit within 3 inches of the Malanthrope. The penalty is not cumulative with other units that give that same kind of penalty, but the extra -1 to hit is nice. It does make a difference, especially against Imperial Guard and Tau, who are 4-up ballistic skill armies. Giving them a 5-up ballistic skill on some of your key targets flat will save you on your damage that you take. Neurothropes, they're your psychic batteries. So it's like the Zoanthrope leader. So they're Shadow in the Warp, so they subtract 1. They have Spirit Leech, so each time a Neurothrope slays a model using the Smite psychic power, you could heal a wound on a friendly Zoanthrope unit. And then a Synapse, Warp Field, and Warp Siphon, you could re-roll rolls of 1 when taking psychic tests for friendly high fleet Zoanthrope units within 6 inches of the model. So if you wanted to play a psychic heavy army, you took 3 Neurothropes and you went into the Zoanthropes, which are the other psychic creatures. You maxed the Zoanthropes out, so you went into 6 Zoanthropes. So let's pull up the rules. So they actually have Warp Blast. When this unit manifests the psychic power, it affects the closest enemy unit within 24 inches instead of 18 inches. So you could smite the entire way across No Man's Land. Not just a little bit into it, but the whole way into it. It affects the closest unit, so you're gonna be good with a unit that only moves or floats 5 inches a turn. Being the closest unit is going to be a pickle. Your opponent's going to be able to outmaneuver you pretty easily. But if you do hit it, it inflicts an additional D3 mortal wounds on an enemy if the unit contains 4 or 5 Zoanthropes, or an additional total 3 if it contains 6. So if you have a full 6 Zoanthropes, which is 240 points, you're doing 3 plus D3, so a full 4 to 6 mortal wounds off each smite, which is an entire squad of Space Marines. And then the Neurothropes have Smite as well, and they get those bonuses to Smite that we saw earlier. We pull that up. Spirit Leech, if it slays a model using Smite, you could heal a wound on a friendly Zoanthrope within 6. Both the Zoanthropes and the Neurothropes have a 3-up invul save, which is one of the best invul saves you could have in the game. Very few things have 3-up invul. There's some things like Storm Shield for the Imperium, but really a 3-up save that can't be modified is about as good as you're going to get. And then, so if we were going to take, let's max out 2 other units. And we'll look at the downside, because there's a big downside to this. So this kind of list, if we were going to go as cheap as possible, this build, that's 1 too many. Pull that off. 2 too many. So the cheapest build that this has is a little over 1,000 points. So it's going to be half your list. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 smites. Now, these guys do not have what the T-Suns and the Grey Knights have, which is the ability to ignore smites getting 1 and 1 worse every time you cast it. They're not Brotherhood of Psykers. So oh yeah, let me do that for you. See if I can get that. So if I make Battlescribe bigger, I can make Battlescribe like that. Make these Tyranids a little smaller. And move Tyranids up there. You think that'll help a little bit? Is that going to look a little better? I can. Yeah. See if that helps out at all. Cool. Thanks, Frosty. So you're at 1,000 points with this. But psychically, it's going to be 5, cast on a 6, cast on a 7, cast on an 8, cast on a 9, cast on a 10 for Smite. That's almost like in one of these, I guess one of these can be Psychic Scream, which is essentially a Smite. The nearest unit within 18 suffers D3 mortal wounds. In addition, if the unit is a Psyker, roll 2 dice. If the result is higher than their leadership characteristic, randomly select one of their psychic powers that can no longer use that psychic power. So this has a real high spike potential. Like, oh, I'm going to cast Psychic Scream against your Demon Prince. Oh, he forgot Warp Time. Good luck with that. So it's some interesting stuff there. Paroxysm. The unit cannot fight in the fight phase until all other units able to do so have done so, which is nice. And then if both players have units that cannot, so it's got a little bit of clarification there. Onslaught allows a Tyranid unit within 18 inches. That unit can shoot even if it's advanced without suffering penalties to hit rolls or heavy weapons, or advancing and shooting with assault weapons. The Horror is a 24-inch range, visible to the Psyker. Unit can start the next psychic phase, or until the unit of the next psychic phase. That unit must subtract 1 from their hit rolls and their leadership characteristic. So -1 to their leadership, and then hit them with Psychic Stream. It could there could be a thing there. Catalyst is the Feel No Pain, so it's a 5-up, damage ignored, Feel No Pain. And then Dominion is a friendly Tyranid within 36 inches, so pretty much the board of the Psyker that has the instinctive behavior ability. Till the end of the next psychic phase, the unit ignores its instinctive behavior ability and automatically passes morale tests. So this is an interesting build. I think the problem with doing a psychic heavy build is not because the individual Psykers are not good. A 6-man Zoanthrope squad is beastly good and throws out so many smites. But the problem is, now that smites actually get worse, and because they don't have Brotherhood of Psykers, you can't get that many smites out of a unit. Yeah. So And this unit suffers perils of the warp. It suffers D3 mortal wounds as described in the core rules, but within 6 inches, it will only suffer damage if the perils of the warp causes the last model. Got it. So basically, it's also saying that every time a Zoanthrope dies is not when perils of the warp explodes. It's only when a Zoanthrope, the last Zoanthrope of the group, bites it. So that's why the Zoanthrope build isn't as viable. Being only able to cast Smite at 1 worse each time kind of ate it. But I was sent a list by Matt, Miracle Matt. So they had, let's actually get this guy in. They had a Kraken Battalion, a Kronos Battalion, it looks like, and a mixed Genestealer cult. So Matt, if you're still out there, I'm going to throw your list together real quick and we'll talk about it. Add Force, Tyranid Battalion, Add Force, Tyranid Battalion, and then the last one's a Genestealer cult. Or Tyranid cult Battalion. Got it. Okay, so the first battalion looked like it is Kraken. Kraken being the when a unit advances, it rolls 3 dice. So I'm going to already think that this first battalion, because it's taking Kraken, is going to be your melee punch. They're taking the Swarmlord. They're taking a Broodlord. They're taking 18 Genestealers. They're taking another group of 18 Genestealers. 27 Hormagaunts. 2 groups of 27 Hormagaunts. Okay. So from a punch perspective, what is this giving you? I like the Broodlord, the cheap kind of dart like precision of getting in there, hitting hard. The Swarmlord is a good tech piece because the Swarmlord has a special ability, him being a named character, allows you to instead of shoot with a unit, in each shooting phase you can pick one friendly high feat unit within 6 inches of the Swarmlord. That unit can move and advance if it wishes, as if it was the movement phase instead of shooting. So nothing in this entire detachment has a gun. So you're basically going to take the Swarmlord, you're going to run, advance some Genestealers, run, advance some Genestealers again in the shooting phase, and then throw 18 Genestealers into something. Then the next turn, throw another 18 Genestealers into something. Then at that time is turn 2, your Hormagaunts are going to hit. They're going to hit like trucks because they're going to be 27 of them in each. And for 27 models at 135 points, we'll look at that. Hormagaunts not super good on its own, but there's 27 of them. So they're movement 8. They're really fast. It does have Hungering Swarm. So if the unit contains 20 or more models, it's re-rolling wound rolls of 1. So not only are they advancing, rolling 3 dice to advance, and whenever they pile in or consolidate, they're moving 6 inches, which is crazy because you just tag 1 on the charge, then you pile in 6 inches, even closer, then you can consolidate 6 inches. That means the one in the back gets an extra 12-inch move at the end of combat. Crazy good. Strength 3 with Scything Talons being Strength User. Headkeeper, how's it going? It's nice to see you drop by for some Tyranid love. We're looking over a list submitted by Nurgle Matt, and it's at least the first part of it is a pretty body heavy Tyranid melee smash into you kind of list. Now the second part of this is Hive Fleet Kraken, which is you get to reroll. Oh no, it's Hive Fleet Kronos. My bad. Hive Fleet Kronos, and it's the reroll ones if your model didn't move. So before I look at any of the units here, I think if this is going to be the melee smash of the list, this part of the list is going to be the shooting backbone. So the list has a Neurothrope, it has 26 Gaunts. Now, it doesn't say if it's a Hormagaunt or a Termagaunt. I'm going to assume, if it didn't say Hormagaunt, that it's Termagaunt in this list. And the difference is that a Hormagaunt is melee oriented and the Termagaunt has a gun. It's not a great gun. If you look at it, it's strength 4, assault 1, damage 1 on a ballistic skill 4 body, but for only 104 guys, you're getting 26 shots. 104 points, 26 shots. And it's only, I believe, 12-inch range? Yeah, 12-inch range. So you're gonna have to get pretty up close and personal before you're sending these shots off anyway. And then 6 Hive Guard. Now, the Hive Guard are kind of interesting. It doesn't say which guns in the list you gave me, if they're taking the shock guns or the impalers. I think I would take impalers, and that may be what this guy's taking. The impaler cannons are heavy 2 shots each, strength 8, so it's an anti-vehicle gun at 36 inches, AP -2, so it's going to take your vehicle's 3-up save to a 5-up save, D3 damage, which is not the best damage for an anti-vehicle weapon. It's kind of on the low end, especially with a ballistic skill 3 body. This weapon can target units that are not visible to the bearer. In addition, units attacked by this weapon do not gain any bonus to their saving throws for being in cover. So what you really want to do is you want to hide these guys behind a wall and then impale them from a distance. This is actually pretty interesting. I may tool around after this and build a list around this concept of being able to shoot things without looking at them. That may be an interesting way of going about it. There's also an Exocrine. We look at the heavy support Exocrine, and we talked about Exocrines too in the lore dump. But Exocrines explode with their death throws. They have instinctive behavior. So, just like the other Tyranid units, if they're not within 24 of a Synapse creature, they subtract 1 from hit rolls when they're not shooting the closest thing. And they subtract 2 from the charge rolls if it's against a unit other than the nearest enemy. So as soon as you start losing your brain bugs, your army starts becoming harder to control if it's not hitting the things that are closest to each model. You still get to move, though, so you get to kind of pick what's closest. But with things that shoot, oftentimes the closest thing is not the thing you want to shoot at. Symbiotic targeting. If the model did not move in the movement phase, it can add 1 to its hit rolls in the following shooting phase. If you do so, it cannot charge in the same turn. So the story behind this is that an Exocrine, the cannon on its back, and the big bug that it's connected to are actually 2 different creatures. And its brain is not big enough to control the gun and the bug. So if you get actual buff to how well it can shoot, if the bug doesn't move, because its brain doesn't have to think about moving, it could focus only entirely on the shooting part. And then a weapon beast, if this model does not move in the movement phase, it can shoot all of its weapons twice in the shooting phase. it only has one weapon, so the fact that it says it shoots all of its weapons twice is kind of overkill, but you basically turn this into a heavy 12 gun, strength 7, -3, 2 damage. So strength 7 is that awkward strength. It's kind of the redheaded stepchild of weapon strengths, because all the toughness of the things that you want to kill up there are toughness 8. So you're still wounding on 5s. And it's only damage 2. So really, an Exocrine is the thing that I'd take out elite infantry with. Not elite infantry and skimmers. Anything toughness 7 and below. If you got a toughness 8 thing on the board, a Knight, a Leman Russ, a Baneblade, Repulsor, I wouldn't use a strength 7 weapon for it. And it's not because your hits are going to be bad, because you're going to have a ballistic skill 4, which becomes ballistic skill 3 if it doesn't move, on 12 shots. So you're going to go down to 10, 9 of them hitting. But the real issue is on the wounding side. If you're shooting a toughness 8 thing, you're going to wound only on 5-ups with no rerolls. So you're going to hit 10 times, but you're going to wound twice. And then only 2 damage with AP -3. Maybe they make 1 save and it does 2 damage on average, or maybe they don't make any saves and it only does 4 damage. But even 4 damage is not enough to bracket a Leman Russ. So an Exocrine is definitely your anti-elite infantry, where the Hive Guard Impaler cannons, if I can get those to pull up, being strength 8, are a better anti-heavy vehicle option. And then the rest of this list is Mixed Genestealer Cult. It's a Pariah with the Twisted Helix, a Magus, and 30 Brood Brothers. I don't... Matt, are you still in the chat? Because if you are, I don't... So this is a John Lennon joins Nick Niavani and John to break down Nick's Tyranid list and Genestealer Cult tactics. So this list is very tooled towards a very specific type of game, which is an objective game and board control. The Brood Brothers and the Magus and the Patriarch with the Twisted Helix, all the Gaunts, all the Hormagaunt bodies, the Genestealer bodies, they're going to provide midfield and upper field pressure. You're going to be swinging tons of bodies into your opponents, and if you can keep that pressure, you're going to open up the board to hold the objectives. So the tournament I think that this list would do well on are tournaments that are objective heavy, maybe using cards for points, and not as much kill heavy. Or kill points heavy. I also see this list doing well on tournaments that have a 2-hour or less time clock per game, because I do not see this list doing well turns 4, 5, and 6. Because while you're throwing your Genestealers in and they're getting eaten up and you're pinning your opponent in the backfield, they're killing all your stuff. They're going to outshoot your list. You have 1 Exocrine, you have 1 squad of Hive Guard. You don't have a whole lot of shooting. You don't have a whole lot of Synapse. So you're going to hold the board pretty effectively with how fast you move. Turns 1, 2, and even 3. And you're going to gain a bunch of points early on. And then in the late game, you're going to lose those points. But if a tournament only has like a 2-hour time limit on a game, you're never going to get to that late game anyway. And this list will really shine there. Now, something that I would change about this list if you wanted to play a longer term game, like I would not bring this list to the Michigan GT, because the Michigan GT gives 3 hours for their game, which means most games are being played to the full potential. The game. So if I was going to take this type of list and bring it to the Michigan GT, what I would bring is the first Hive fleet I'd take is Kronos for the reroll ones. I would maybe take 2 Broodlords, and I would take 3 Ripper Swarms at least to begin with, and then because the Ripper Swarm gets to pop up anywhere outside of 9 inches of the opponent, kind of like Deep Strike. But given that both your characters can be both your HQ choices can be character shielded, you could pop the Ripper up to force them to have to deal with 33 points worth of a guy instead of shooting your 115 point character. And then grab something real quick. Okay, there you go. Going back, sorry. Yeah, but it did have Matt. That's great. You can lurk. That's fine. I don't want to take you from when you're eating dinner, but it did have a cool tech tool in it that a part of their shooting gun line in that list did not need line of sight, and I think that could be expanded upon. So if you took was an elites was the Tyrant Guard, and you maxed them out. No, Tyrant Guard are the melee variant of it. I wanted Hive Guard, and I wanted to max them out with their Impaler Cannons. Then I take another unit of Hive Guard, max them out with their Impaler Cannon. In heavy support, I go Biovores, max it out with 3 Biovores, take another group of Biovores and a third group of Biovores, max all them out. So this basically has 9 Biovores, all not needing line of sight to shoot, and they're shooting at 48-inch range with the Spore Mine, so they're dealing mortal wounds at 48-inch range. These Hive Guard are dealing 36-inch range, strength 8, heavy 2 weapons, also no line of sight needed. The Rippers are going to protect your Broodlords, and I think after you take this, like, does not need line of sight tech piece of a backfield, what I would do is just smash bodies. So kind of like what they did. Take a Hive fleet. I'm not sure I'd take the Hive fleet that gives more speed, because you don't necessarily need the speed here. What you really want is survivability. You want to keep the people away from your gun lines and away from being able to see your gun lines, because all 9 Biovores and 12 Hive Guard, if you can keep them out of line of sight, that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, almost 900 points of your army that can't be killed. If it can't be seen, it can't be shot at. And it is just going to output so much hate. And this army, I think, will do very well at Michigan GT or other games that can go long into the late game. And you get to place terrain. Because if you get to place terrain, you get to make kill zones. Let half the board be completely open. That's fine. As long as you got enough walls to hide your army, I think it would be, you do wonders in here. So something that may help, what would be another 1,000 points that you can do? You kind of want to distract from this 1,000 points. So the Hive Fleet, our options are reroll wound rolls of 1 in the fight phase, reroll failed charge rolls, the units of this adaptation. The benefit of cover, I'm not sold on that. Roll 3 dice for the advance. So maybe we do this one. We do Leviathan. Leviathan is the 6-up Feel No Pain. So we'll try and keep it cheap because we want to maximize bodies. We'll go 2 Neurothropes. It'll give you 2 denies and give you some smite potential in the middle board. It also gives you units in the middle of the board that have a 3-up invul save and are annoying for your opponent to deal with. And you want to you want to have enough punch in the center that it is annoying, but not so much punch that you're devoting too much to any one unit, and not so little punch that it's going to be that they're just going to ignore you because it's not a threat. So I may take 2 more Ripper Swarms, and what I'd use these Ripper Swarms for, or maybe 3 more Ripper Swarms, they are late game coming down to hold an objective, and they are middle game, oh no, something got through somewhere, I need to hold it up for a turn so that I could shoot it to death. Or, with this many Ripper Swarms, if my opponent also has drops in, so they're going to drop in so that they could have line of sight to my backfield, a lot of those drops have to be 9 inches away from stuff. I would deny so much board with 6 Ripper Swarms. And the rest will be Hormagaunts. I think Hormagaunts would be a nice... Hormagaunts are actually more expensive because they're faster. I don't need it to be faster. If I go Termagaunts, and then I go... what is the Spike Rifle? That's a Legends. I don't necessarily want a Legends. So it's strength 3 with this weapon, but it's a pistol. Pistols mean it could shoot in close combat. It's not hateful. Strength 3 is a little but the whole point of this is to just soak up things in the middle of the board. So maybe you do go Spine Fists. And you go 30 of them. What's wrong with that? Okay. You go another Spine Fist. 30 Spine Fists. I'll take you down to 0. Move you up to 30. Okay. So 2 units of 30, 6 units of 3 Rippers, 2 Neurothropes to kind of hold down the center, and then probably something punchy. Something punchy to kind of give this side a little bit of teeth. That, or I may give this side another HQ, because the Broodlords are going to want to hide in midfield with everything else. I may give this an HQ choice for Synapse of the shooting guys. And what kind of HQ Synapse choices do we have? We could have another Neurothrope. We could have a Turvagon. Okay, so the Turvagon, reroll hit rolls in the shooting phase for Turvagant units within 6 inches of this model. And actually, that may be a good... They reroll wound rolls of 1. So, actually, that's a nice little tech piece. If I take this down and I make them flesh borers again, so they're strength 4 weapons instead of strength 3 weapons. I just like how that moves around so much. And I pull the 30 guys out of here as well. And I add that 30 to the flesh borers. Then all I really need to do is take out a Neurothrope, remove selection, add the Turvagon to this. Oh, nope. I want to add the Turvagon to the bottom one. Add the Turvagon here. Add the Neurothrope back up top. Actually, I could add 2 Neurothropes up top. So I could run 3 Neurothropes total. 2 in the... this is kind of a nice tech tool too, having 2 Neurothropes in the unit with the backfield. Because if you don't get the terrain the way that you need it, and you have to split your backup, you could put a Neurothrope with each one of your hide out of line of sight shooting. And then still have a Synapse over there with them. And then the Turvagon, while giving Synapse to all the Termagants in the center of the board, will help a ton with the reroll 1s for shooting. So you're going to have 60 Gaunts all rerolling 1s to hit and 1s to wound. And then this guy actually spawns more Termagants. If it does so, add a new unit of 10 Termagants to your army and set it up on the battlefield so it's wholly within 6 inches of the Turvagon and more than 1 inch from the enemy. All these models are armed with flesh borers. Alternately, you can replace them with 10 models lost earlier in the battle in an existing unit of Termagants from your army that's within 6 inches of the Turvagon. Models placed in this way must be within 6 inches of the Turvagon and more than 1 inch from an enemy. You can only replace models armed with flesh borers. If you do not place some of the models in excess, they are discarded. Okay, so I think that this is going to muck up the center of the board greatly. And even with this, I may take... How much is another Termagant squad? 40 points. I may take a Ripper Swarm off just to add another Termagant squad. Oh, I added them to the wrong side. That is why they showed up there. Just add another Termagant squad. And add just as many flesh borers as I can. Oh, I can't. Ugh. Okay, well, maybe you live and you learn. We'll just add the Ripper back in. That's what I'd do. I think that this would have some nice teeth, and while it plays in a unique way that I don't think a lot of people are looking at right now, which is I'm gonna hide my guys out of line of sight and they're gonna shoot at you. When we looked at our meta list yesterday, let's look at how this list stacks up against that meta. So the Space Marine meta list. The Space Marine list was survivable, and this list doesn't necessarily take out its survivability, but the little killing potential that the Iron Hand Space Marine list had, was all in bolter fire, and it all needed line of sight, so it can't touch your killing spot. So all those Hive Guard are shooting from cover, shooting from outside of line of sight, and they're plinking away at the Space Marines in the middle of the field. Hopefully, also, you can swarm, because your foot soldiers are faster than his, swarm his midfield and pin him as far back as possible, Space Marine player, and then use your Rippers to hold and contest the back objectives by running them in against the back line, and just tying things up. Your midfield is going to die against his Space Marine midfield eventually, but if you can get a sizable lead with objectives and you can kill key players, your shooting will eventually eat through enough of that Primaris list. When you're looking at the Chaos list, the Chaos list was the Possessed Bomb and buffing the Possessed. I think that this list has enough little Rippers and Termagants and enough kind of redirect for the Possessed to eat. The Possessed are going to kill a ton of this list, but this list can shoot from outside line of sight a lot of the rest of of the Possessed list other than the Possessed, kill most of the rest of the list, and then drop your Rippers in at the end to hold the objectives. If the Possessed list only has a big squad of Possessed left, and it's still going around erasing units, that's fine. It's only going to hold ever one objective, and you can win on objectives against that army. When it comes against Tau, you're going to have to play the objective game too. Triple Riptides are rough, but triple Riptides by themselves do not ignore line of sight. So if you could hide well from the Riptides, your opponent won't be able to shoot most of your army, hopefully for most of the game, which is kind of what you want. You'll want to feed the triple Riptide list, Termagants, and Ripper Swarms. You're going to want to try and sneak in the Broodlords into the lines and start tearing up the drones. And you probably could beat that list pretty easily. I also think that you could beat the Grey Knights list pretty easily. The one I think will give you the most hurt is, ironically, from the lore earlier today, the Orc list. I think the Orc list will give you the most pain, because the Orc list will go point for point and wound for wound, just as much shooting as you can dish out and just as much combat as you can dish out. And they can systematically jump their boys around to harass your backline, so that you're constantly worrying about where the boys are going to go, or where some of their other shock attack guns are going to shoot at. I think that Orc list really does put a hurt to this Tyranid list. But that's been kind of a lore look into Tyranids, and a list look onto what people would build. To recap, Matt sent in a great list that we looked at from Nick Niavati into a Tyranid kind of build play, which had a lot of good things in it, but it probably, in my opinion, would play better in a 2-hour time frame, or in shorter games. And we saw a tech piece from that, is that he was using 6 Hive Guard with Impaler Cannons outside of line of sight, keep them safe. And you could use that same kind of gist and emphasize it in a list like this, and hopefully get a more killy over a long-term game. My name is Brandon Burns. I'm with Team Bad Decisions, and we are a bringing the hobby back kind of team. We're also can be found at competitions trying to bring the competitive edge as well. And if you're interested in any of the content we produce, we'll be live on Twitch with a show called Hobby Time, 1 p.m. on Saturdays. We also come on every now and again to talk lore and list builds from stuff that's going on right now in the meta. If you can't catch our stuff live on Twitch, you can catch us on YouTube on the Team Bad Decisions, or grab our website at teambaddecisions.com. Hope you guys are all staying safe out there, and have a great night. I'm going to be heading out.